I tried beating Terraria, but I can only use shields. This brand new class lets us ram into our enemies, demolishing them in the process. Anything from a wooden shield to a zenith shield is in the game, so will I be able to beat Moonlord? Well, let's find out. I started off by spawning into the world, opening up my starter bag, and checking out all the various different shields we can use. This mod quite literally has a shield for every stage of the progression. It is probably one of the greatest fleshed out classes I have seen that's not a part of like a massive mod. I used up all the items from my starter bag and started chopping down trees so I can craft my very first shield. Made a workbench, I crafted myself the wooden shield, which gave us 7 contact damage and 1 defense. Essentially the way these shields work is we can double tap in a certain direction and ram into enemies. The further you progress with the shields, the more they are able to dash, and the further they're able to dash with less cooldown, making them more and more powerful as the game goes on. And as you can guess, that is correct. We have to take damage when we are actually attacking enemies. I crafted myself some NPC houses as soon as I spawned in and got myself a shield, and then I went over to the desert in order to start breaking some cactuses, as we are going to need a certain cactus shield in order to craft the zenith shield at the end of the game. That is correct. At the very end of the game, I will be crafting the zenith shield. That is my goal for this video.
Morty, I need your help. We need to go on a quick adventure.
I then continued over to the jungle, and once I made it past the jungle, I started mining my way up on a little hill. I cleared out all the chests that I came by, and once I came back to spawn, I organized the rest of my chest. I got myself a bunch of various different types of woods so I can craft all various different wood shields, as we're going to need them for the future to craft the zenith shield. I started work on a elevator, and I also managed to gather some ores such as iron and basically every other ore, because we literally need every shield within the game to craft the zenith shield. I crafted myself the palmwood shield, the rich mahogany shield, the iron shield, and at this point I equipped the iron shield as it was the best one I could use. You know, it's far better than the wood. Then I went mining, found a mushroom biome, found some life crystals, got myself a bunch of chests which had tons of good loot, and then I continued digging out my elevator. I stumbled upon some obsidian, and realizing that I'm actually going to need shroomite later within the playthrough, I started making myself an above ground mushroom biome so I don't have to wait later like a bunch of time as I'm already further in the progression. This is kind of smart. This is very smart, as usually I do it at the very last minute and then I have to unnecessarily wait like 2 hours, but that's besides the point. Started working on a mushroom biome, made myself a copper shield just so we can have it for later for the zenith shield. I also made myself a tin shield. I neatly organized them all within a chest, and then I went mining within the caverns to get as much ores as I could. I stumbled upon tons and tons of chests at this point, and I got myself a bunch of summons for the Eye of Cthulhu, and then I went over to the corruption biome at the right side of the world and started chucking bombs at the orbs. I made a tiny arena for the Eye of Cthulhu, and then I started fighting it. Not really thinking much of this, as you know, I thought I was going to die anyways. I just wanted to test it out and see what the boss was like. I was using the platinum shield to spam it, and what I realized is an OP strategy within this class. If a certain boss is rushing you and you dash into it, you will bounce like in and out inside the boss and absolutely demolish it. So if you look at the Eye of Cthulhu boss fight, as it rushes into me, I dash into it and we deal crazy amounts of damage, and I was actually able to take out the Eye of Cthulhu literally within like the first 20 minutes of me playing this mod. This is where I realized that this class is going to be far more powerful than I ever thought. So I just took every other boss as a joke. I geared up and went to go fight the Eater of Worlds. I actually managed to take him out, even though it did take me quite a long time, and I crafted myself the Demonite shield. I then went to go fight the Eater of Worlds more and more, as I needed more of his scales and Demonite ore in order to craft a full set of armor that was for the contact damage class, which is what we're using right now. So for literally the rest of the time, I just spent my life grinding away at the Eater of Worlds until I can craft myself a full set of guard armor, which is the shield class armor. By this point, we're doing pretty good. We have a nightmare pickaxe, we took out the Eater of Worlds, and we're only like 1 hour into the playthrough. This might be one of the most overpowered classes I've actually played. I continued work on my elevator, made my way down to the underworld, got myself a hell forge.
That's gonna destroy my basket.
Started getting myself some hellstone. I was actually able to craft some hellstone bars, but I did not have a lot of hellstone, so I could only craft a couple, but it was enough for a hellstone shield. I removed the Demonite shield, put it away, and during this time I saw a meteorite falling out of the sky. As soon as I got the prompt that it had landed, I went quickly over to the left side of the world and picked up all the meteorite. Once I had gathered all the meteorite and I came back to spawn, I crafted myself a meteor shield. And the next thing we had to do was build an arena for the Wall of Flesh. During this time, I got myself more hellstone, crafted myself a whole different set of armor that was actually crafted out of hellstone, called the Defender armor set. And then I went over to the jungle in order to get myself stingers and jungle spores so we can craft the blade of grass version of the shields. Once I had all the resources, I needed the Muramasa version of the shields, so I had to go over to the dungeon, make myself a tiny arena for Skeletron, and once it was nighttime, I fought Skeletron. This boss fight was probably even easier than the Eye of Cthulhu, as Skeletron is notoriously known for rushing into you, right? As well as his arms. So you can check out on screen how this entire boss fight went. It was quite pathetic, I may say so. And once the little sand skeleton boy was out, I went straight into the dungeon, got myself the Muramasa shield quite quickly without realizing it actually, so I started opening up a bunch more chests, and I then realized I had two, so I came back to spawn, made myself a molten pickaxe, and then went over to the right side of the world where the corruption biome was in order to craft myself the Knight's Edge version of the shields. This is where I encountered a special mob, which was a part of this mod that I frankly did not know would work in the way it did. So I was just like stumbling my way over to the corruption and I encountered a creeper. Thinking, you know, I'm too overpowered for it. I walked into it, it blew up, and I died, which was silly. It was very stupid. Anyways, I decided to gather all my stuff, craft the Knight's Edge version of the shield, and then I went down to the underworld, got myself a guide voodoo doll, and since I had an arena, I chucked the doll into the lava and started spamming the wall of flesh. This was actually quite challenging, as every time I would spam the wall of flesh, I would go behind it and it would pull me back, you know, and just do a bunch of damage to me. It was kind of unfair, but we did manage to take it out, even though I got tossed into lava like a million times. This is probably one of the harder fights. Like if this was master mode, there was no way I'd be able to do this one. The very first wall of flesh boss fight, I guess I had my hopes up too much, as at the very end, when it had very little health, I managed to die. So I decided to get myself another guide voodoo doll, this time actually get some buffs, and then refight the wall of flesh. This time we absolutely shredded through the fleshy wall. Then we took out all of the altars using an altar exterminator, which just like takes out all of the various different demon altars within the world. We blessed our world with all of the hard mode ores, and then I went on to mining palladium. Once I got myself a palladium pickaxe, I didn't even bother crafting the shield, as that isn't really useful in a crafting recipe anywhere. I got myself an orichalcum pickaxe, an orichalcum anvil, and then I went to go get titanium. I didn't even bother actually even crafting a titanium shield, as it wasn't even worth it. It only dealt like 7 more damage, and it didn't even have a special magic buff that shot like these fireballs that the Knight's Edge shield was able to shoot. So I decided to stick with like my Knight's Edge shield, but I did want to craft myself a new set of armor. After this, I went farming for a bunch of souls of light within the underground hallowed biome, and then I went to go farm out souls of night. I went over to the Sky Island to get myself souls of flight so I can craft myself wings, and once I came all the way back to spawn, I was able to craft myself a set of beautiful, majestic harpy wings. This is where I decided to go fight the twins as soon as it turned to nighttime, using my magic ability, which I was able to use due to my night shield, and it used up a little bit of mana. I started fighting the twins. In the middle of the boss fight, I got really low on HP, and I had no money to heal with the nurse, so I tried to summon the Eye of Cthulhu mid-boss fight so I could destroy the Eye of Cthulhu for its HP, but that didn't really work, and I just managed to die. This is where I realized I had to, you know, re-strategize. This isn't gonna work for me too well, huh? So I fought off the Blood Moon for the remainder of the night, built myself more NPC houses, expanded our psychedelic mushroom arena, and then I went on to fight the twins again. But this time I had mana potions in my inventory, so I didn't actually have to bash into the green fire laser guy, the one that shoots the fire at you, and instead I could just use my magic ability. I know it dealt no damage, but it was better than bashing into it and dying non-stop. The only time I would ram into Spasmatism was when he was ramming into me, so I could do that whole Eye of Cthulhu trick where I just like absolutely demolish him. But using this tactic, we took out the twins, and then as soon as we took out the twins, I went to craft myself the hallowed shield. As soon as I got myself the hallowed shield, it actually turned to daytime, sadly. And then we had a solar eclipse. Mid-solar eclipse, I decided to pause the game and go AFK. And then once I came back, I was covered in tombstones. There was literally a graveyard biome all around me, so I took care of the tombstones. And once it turned to nighttime again, I started fighting Skeletron Prime. I managed to take out Skeletron Prime in the exact same fashion that I took out the twins. And then once those were incinerated, I upgraded my hallowed shield with Souls of Fright, and that was like the next shield that we can craft essentially. The last boss on our list is the Destroyer. I went to go farm some money by defeating the Eater of Worlds over and over again, and then I bought myself a bunch of potions. Waiting for it to turn to nighttime, I expanded the mushroom arena a little bit, and then as it turned to nighttime, I fought the Destroyer in the same fashion that I fought all the other bosses. I just decided to keep distance, stay as far away as I can from him, and then just spam him with the fire projectiles. If I did manage to get caught like in between his little wormy section, I would do the little Eye of Cthulhu, like bounce off his edges trick, but it frankly didn't work as well against the Destroyer, and the Destroyer was by far the hardest boss for this class. But anyways, we managed to take him out, and then once he was out, I upgraded my Knight's Edge shield into the true Knight's Edge shield, which gave us the ability to actually shoot the Knight's Edge swords out of our shield, which was super overpowered. And then we refought the Destroyer a million more times just so I could bully him with like my newfound power. And once I got bored of that, I went over to the jungle to mine up chlorophyte. I got tons and tons of chlorophyte, and once I came back to spawn, I crafted myself the true Excalibur version of the shields, which just like let us shoot Excalibur shots instead of the Knight's Edge one. But I did need a broken hero shield in order to get myself the Terra shield, so I shouldn't be too happy yet. I went to go defeat Plantera within the jungle. I made myself a tiny arena, and then I summoned her in. Then using the shield, the boss fight was ridiculously easy. We just bumped into her, shot the Knight's Edge projectiles a couple more times. The thing about these projectiles is actually don't take up mana compared to the other projectiles that we were shooting, so they're quite overpowered. I went over to Golem's dungeon, and as soon as I had the chance, I summoned in a solar eclipse. I was waiting for Mothron so I can get myself the broken hero shield, and this was treacherous. It was so horrific. We killed so many Mothrons without a single broken hero shield. I got myself tons and tons of swords, but not a single shield. So I just decided to buy Mothron eggs next time I summon in the solar eclipse, so I don't have to wait for the Mothrons to spawn in, and I could just do it myself, as it was not worth it to wait for them to spawn on their own. I then went back to the jungle in order to take out Plantera a couple more times so I can get this green Seedler version of the shields for the Zenith shield at the end of the game. And then I went over to the dungeon to try to get myself some ectoplasm. That didn't work out too well, so I just decided to kill the Destroyer a couple more times so I could just buy the ectoplasm instead. After crafting all the necessary shields that I could at that point of the game, I waited for it to turn to daytime, and I summoned in the solar eclipse, and I bought myself a bunch of Mothron eggs from the Deviant from a quality of life mod, and then I killed a bunch of Mothrons, granting us a whole new set of armor, which was only acquired from Mothrons, also a part of the shield set, and I finally got myself the broken hero shield. I combined my two amazing shields, crafting the Terra shield, and then I went over to Golem's temple to fight and defeat Golem, and once I defeated him, I went to go check on what other shields I had left to craft. All I had was the Influx shield, the Horseman shield, and all the shields dropped from Moonlord. I went over to the sky and prompted a Martian Madness event to happen. Killing a couple of Martian saucers, I got myself the Influx shield, which shot the Influx Waver sword projectiles. And once I took that out, I decided to plant myself a bunch of pumpkins and then go fight the Lunatic Cultist. We took out the Lunatic Cultist quite easily. It wasn't too difficult. For the most part, I just used the Terra projectiles instead of actually bashing into him, as they just dealt more damage, and it was far more convenient as he never really rushed you in the same way that the rest of the bosses do. And once the Lunatic Cultist was out, I crafted myself a pair of beetle wings, and then went to go fight the pillars. I took out the Nebula pillar first, then the Stardust pillar. I also took out the Solar pillar, and this actually granted us a bunch of these fragments that we could use to craft better shields. This is where I picked up the pumpkins, waited for it to turn to nighttime, and summoned in the Pumpkin Moon event. I killed enough pumpkins to get myself the Horseman shield. This did take quite a while, so it was kind of annoying, and then I stacked it back into the chests of like all the shields that I have. By the way, look how gorgeous this chest is.
Sensational.
Tell me this isn't beautiful. Anyways, once that was done, I decided to defeat the Destroyer a couple more times. I crafted the Heart Shield. I got all of the various different shields I needed. And once I had all the resources, I crafted the Shield of Life, which is like a combination of like this Heart Shield and the Terra Shield. And it was absolutely overpowered. It made us gain a bunch of HP once we rammed into enemies, which was actually very useful for Moonlord. And it was one of the last shields before the Zenith shield. I regrouped all of the shields that I needed in my inventory just to check which ones I was missing, and once I had realized that I had all the shields besides the one that Moonlord drops, I unsurprisingly went over to the last pillar, which is the Vortex pillar, and started taking out the mobs there. I took out the pillar, buffed up, and waited for Moonlord to spawn in. Moonlord, unsurprisingly, spawned in. I guess that's what happens when you take out all the pillars, huh? I started spamming him with the Shield of Life, to just spamming his arms nonstop, bashing into him to get more HP. And this was quite easy because I could just replenish all of my HP whenever I was low, which made the boss fight not too challenging. So I took out all of his eyes and then finally took out his core. In a not very friendly way, the Moonlord did not drop a single shield that he was supposed to drop, so I took him out again. After fighting him again, he didn't drop a single shield, and so I fought him again for him to not drop any other shield either.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
This is where I just decided to go to Heroes mod, as frankly I wasn't going to waste any more time with the 0% drop rates, and I just got the last two Moonlord shields. Let's just pretend like I got them legit, right? So I decided to use the Stellar Shield, which was basically like the Star Fury version of the shield. And what it did is it shot a bunch of stars when you bumped into an enemy. I also crafted myself a full set of the post moonlord armor. But yeah, the Stellar Shield was overpowered. If you got like a huge crit, it would just summon in millions of stars, which was super powerful. And then I just decided, whatever, I'll just craft the Zenith Shield and let's summon in the Moonlord and test out the Zenith Shield on the Moonlord. This shot out like every projectile there was, literally. It was super overpowered and it took out Moonlord in a breeze. Just like, check this out. He barely even had the time to spawn and he was already dead. It literally took me under 10 seconds to take him out. Count it if you don't believe me. Anyways, this has been the shield class from the Ruin mod. Consider dropping a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. This has been Boyo. Peace out.